nation. Come for the thrills, telling truths and hope you won't find any black pills. Right beneath the surface, pull back the propaganda veil. Find true freedom and justice. It's red, right, and real.
Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome. I was doing my part to post the show, doing a little multitasking. I am Bella Dangelo.
I am AK Kamara.
And this is Red, Right, and Real.
Yeah, let's make sure that as you guys are tuning in, that you're hitting that like button. If you're watching this on YouTube, on X, on Facebook, make sure you also hit the share button, because if you don't share it, no one's going to see it. And the reason that we do this, we hopefully hope to entertain people, but we need more people to see it. So that's going to help jig the algorithm. So again, hit the like button, hit the share button, so everyone can see what it is that we are doing here on Red, Right, and Real.
Awesome. We got a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to try and not be too long-winded. That doesn't usually fare so well when I say it that way. And back in the day, I used to say I'm going to keep duct tape wrapped around my wrists and squeeze it really tight to try and reel myself in. I want to get, first of all, we've got a lot to cover. So we've got, two terror attacks. I do want to say I want to do a year in review. I had it all set up to do some of the biggest blunders. We have had an amazing year. The fact that Donald J. Trump got elected, he got certified today on the anniversary of 2020 of January 6th, which was staged to make us all mega look like we were the highest criminals in the land. But we're going to talk about the two terror attacks. There's been a lot of talk about the mysterious fog. And then we also, we're going to talk about, might switch gears, talk about a little bit about Minnesota, possible some discussion about Timmy Walz and maybe doing a collaborative suit against Walz for the COVID scam to the state of Minnesota. But I want to start out with a little bit of my commentary, if you will. I worked quite a bit yesterday with you, AK, trying to put my thoughts together and try and formulate something that I guess what I really believe that this country has learned a lesson. And the lesson that has been learned is that we have gone from a country that whether you didn't want to vote, you believed your vote didn't count, you voted based on character, principle, values. We've gone through 2 election cycles where character and personality was put on a larger stage, as well as so many other things that the media played upon us. And then the media, along with the Democrat Party, tried to cover up one of the second biggest scams, which created the most dangerous situation that we have found our country in a very long time, which is being run by a mentally incapacitated leader that tried to pull a fast, and the whole party tried to pull a fast one on us on trying to then implement a far more even dangerous, completely incompetent individual, which is why we're at the point right now where instead of laughing and joking and celebrating and really looking back at the journey that we've been on, we're also reporting some very, very dangerous things that are happening in this country. Thank God we have just 14 days until the inauguration. But I also want to take a step back and say, when did this country start to turn the corner? How long have we all been at work and trying to wake people up and getting people to understand this isn't just an election? This isn't just, do you feel like getting out and voting? We've been at work for a very long time. AK, I think that you got involved what year?
Well, I got involved in 2006, with the Republican Party in Minnesota. And I jumped in head first. really like at a grassroots level, basically. Like I remember going around. Michelle Bachmann was running for Congress at that time. You had Mark Kennedy running for Senate against Amy Klobuchar in her first term. You had Tim Pawlenty running for a second term. You had a bunch of local races. I remember being in CD5 and helping out with that candidate that was running against then. I believe it was right either before. Yeah, it might have been Keith Ellison, one of his first terms before he became Attorney General. And I would go out to rallies and hold signs. When there was debates, we would stand outside and do like what we call like street theater. We dressed up. And then we went out and we did the work of door knocking and lit dropping and making phone calls. All of that started me for 2006. But I know for you were already like politically aware, but you kind of, started to come into that after 9/11 happened. That was kind of like a big wake up moment for you. And again, for those of you that haven't watched this show before, Bella in 2009 said to Sean Hannity on his show, I believe it was either on air or off air, that
On air.
that Donald Trump would make a great president in 2009. And I got to imagine that means that you're one of the first people of all time to ever call that one out. And so what we kind of talked about is I want to kind of bring people to a moment that I think encapsulates a lot of what Donald Trump has represented. And for those of you that remember, there was the iconic debate that happened between President Donald, well, at the time, it was candidate Donald J. Trump and Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, or I guess at the time she was still the Secretary of State.
Correct.
She wanted to run for president.
Yeah, and I want to where I think this was very important as to I look back to how did the country go from it really didn't matter which party got in charge, right? The Democrats or the Republicans. It created the environment that allowed Barack Hussein Obama to get into office. He wasn't vetted. He was seen as we need to vote for him first Black president. People didn't understand what the real hope and change was. I believe that the beginning seeds of looking for a true leader and somebody like Donald Trump, the seeds were planted at that point. However, there was a mass majority of us that were still fed up with the establishment, the typical run on one thing and do nothing when get into office. There was many of us that believed and understood that there was probably no winning against the establishment, against the rhinoism. We had given up on the Republican Party in and of itself. So when Donald Trump came down that escalator, many were refreshed by the blue collar, direct, straight, crass way that he talked. But there was something that happened in this clip that you're going to play. And I'm going to jump in afterwards and explain what I fully believed happened after this moment in America on the debate stage.
All right, let's get her rolling. And 3, 2, 1.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah. Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Okay, so I was in North Dakota from 2009 to 2015. And there was not a day that went by that I wasn't told Hilda Beast is going to be your daddy, bar none. There was nothing that was preventing her literally from being the next in line. I mean, that's just the way. And with the establishment and when you would try and talk to people and, AK, there was just an impending belief that we weren't ever. I remember having a conversation at a drilling rig with Big Chief. And when he said, what do you mean take this country back? Take it back to what? Because we had never had somebody that had actually taken us back to what? American exceptionalism, American great, patriotism, belief in a leader. There's also something that had never happened. Accountability to crimes against this country. Everyone knows what the Clintonista machine has done. And when Donald J. Trump made that comment, I believe that that stirred the silent majority, the blue collar Schlitz malt drinking, Marlboro smoking, hardcore men and women that refused to vote. You know why? Because it didn't, as Hillary would say, what does it matter? I get it. That's why I got involved, because there was an actual belief. What does it matter? Because we were being proven by election and election that the can was getting kicked further and further down the road and the establishment was winning. But I also believe in divine intervention. And when Donald J. Trump boldly made that statement, that everybody silently sat in their living rooms, watched that and said, God bless that man. He finally said what we've all been thinking out loud and on live TV and international TV.
Yeah, what to me was fascinating, and this is why I love doing this show with you, Bella, is like I get this different perspective, right? Now, for me, again, I got involved in politics 2006. Donald Trump was just like a business guy or something. I didn't really pay much attention. I'm from North Dakota. At the time, I just moved to Minnesota. Donald Trump was like the furthest on my radar that I could ever care about. But I did care about politics, and I actually did believe, and I still believe to this day, that there are people that are involved in the political movement before Donald Trump ever got involved in the Republican Party specifically, that care about this country, that care about the state, that were out there doing the work. But I do agree that it was sometimes hard to get that message through to working class. And most working class Americans back then believed that Republicans were for corporations only, and they didn't care about the little guy. That wasn't true, but that was the perception. Because even back then when I got involved, I come from a working class, and I would say even below where, I don't know what's below working class, just poor, like a poverty household where my mom and dad had a taxi cab business for a while, but before the taxi cab business, my mom hadn't worked for like 10 years. And then my dad went to prison. So like there wasn't steady work. So you can't call us working class. I would say government dependent. But even in that environment growing up, I still, understanding what the Republican Party stood for, I was like, this is what our values are. But I do agree that the perception of what Republicans stood for fell short until, honestly, I think Donald Trump was able to bring in that populist wave. And I actually have conversations with people even just a few days ago talking about how successful Donald Trump has been at bringing people to the political table and waking them up that they've not understood that Republicans have stood for what we've stood for. Like Republican Party has changed in certain regards, right? Like, you know, going from being more pro-war to like, we're not anti-war, but we're just like, maybe we shouldn't focus on like doing the whole global police thing. That's a big change. But when it comes to lowering taxes and doing things to help elevate people economically and all of these different like individualized personal liberty issues, that's like the bread and butter of the Republican Party. That existed before President Trump ever became a thing. But I agree, though, today with having President Trump officially store the deal, historic landslide win, being able to get really without, you know, to the whimper, I guess you could best say, to the whimper of the Democrats. You know, some of them were crying around saying that they were going to, you know, not certify the election results or whatever, but that ended up not happening. And because of that, you know, they lost their gusto or whatever. Now we have, you know, this, you know, officially certified. We have Donald J. Trump and JD Vance, and we're 15 days away from when the magic and the hard work really starts. You know, you got to make the magic happen, I guess I should say, but the real work starts. Just today, Justin Trudeau announced that he's resigning or whatever as prime minister. I guess New Zealand, there's some other countries as well where there's some folks that are resigning, which has some of the conspiracy folks saying, what's going on here? I just think it's because Donald Trump and this populist wave that really started with President Trump has swept across not just the country, but across the globe. And you're starting to see more populists on the right start to win majorities, people wanting to close their borders and really affirm, especially look at Europe, what's going on there, but bring it back here to land it. I think today was just, again, you know, the Democrats didn't really put up a fight, which I'm glad they didn't, because this is what the will of the people are. And I will say it was funny seeing Kamala have to sit up there and announce her election loss. Like the optics of that are absolutely fantastic. I love seeing it. So for you, you know, someone that you've been such a huge Trump supporter, Bella, and then with 2020 and that election being stolen, and then all of the indictments, did you think that you would be sitting here, let's say 4 years ago today, January 6th of 2021 to January 6th of 2025, did you think you'd be sitting here watching a President Trump win his second term after 4 years of fighting? How does it feel for you as someone that's been a supporter for so long?
So there's a Bible verse that says, when man humbles himself, God will heal his land. I clung on to that a long, long time ago. I started posting it back in 2016. I bring up the fact about from 2009 to 15 that literally every single day as I sat in my pickup truck running this show with a phone and an iPad, it could be 50 below. I could be sitting in a gas station parking lot. I could be sitting in a hotel parking lot pirating internet. A lot of you are listening saying, I don't believe you really did that. Or maybe some of you are saying, wow, I can't imagine that you really did that. Some days I can't really believe that I did that because I was out in Williston, North Dakota. But I know one thing was that I never gave up in the fight and the belief. And the thing is I fundamentally believe in us, Americans. And I have never believed that we were sheeple and that we were that stupid. I believe that there were so many of us that didn't know how to find our voice, or when we did find it, where to put it, because we didn't have anybody to put it behind. And when Barack Hussein Obama came into office, so yes, did I think I would be seen and celebrating? Yes, and I'm going to explain this. When Barack Hussein Obama got into office, the hope and change that he shoved down our throats so eloquently, there were many of us that saw the anti-Americanism that was seeping through his whole 8 years in office. Then we get Donald J. Trump that came into 16. The world really changed. Internationally, we had a presence. We stopped Rocket Man. We put Putin in his place. We were energy independent. We had patriotism like I'd never seen before, including being in Minnesota. Now, the media did a fantastic job of turning Donald J. Trump into Orange Man, Bad Man. It was an emotionally charged election, along with so many other factors. COVID, I'm not going to go into election fraud because that's in the past. But you can't then take a country that experienced all of that, and we got off course from our show prep. Joe, go figure that. You then turn around and you basically put in Biden, which over half the country knew he legitimately did not win. However you want to count that. Stolen, miscounted, votes not. However, I'm not going to go into that piece of it because we can't. But I remember the Christmas after the November election, and 18-year-old boys loading my Christmas tree in the back of my truck. They saw my Trump stickers, and immediately they said, well, the Democrats learned how to cheat once again. Now, okay, he got in. Now, all of a sudden, nice Joe that was supposed to be bringing the country together can't finish sentences. He hasn't changed from his bumbling performances from, remember Dog-Faced Pony Soldier? When asked about a question in a town hall debate, and they start saying simple things like, oh, that's just cute old Joe. Okay. Well, as gas prices start soaring, we start going to the grocery store, and grocery store prices are inching their way up. My Diet Coke at McDonald's went from $1 to I'm now $3.90 for $2 for two Diet Cokes. I started asking the kids at the McDonald's as I'm driving through who they're going to vote for. They're all telling me Trump. Meanwhile, we have an administration that is pushing every agenda in front of us, defending the transgender in the locker rooms, in sports, everything else. Now, I'm going to fast forward because the dangerous part is now when the country is really facing some, I mean, we went from innocent women and children raped and murdered by these thugs coming across this open border as Joe Biden is selling pieces of the border off. He is shutting down drilling offshore. He's doing absolutely everything that he can impede. And I asked myself, and so is America, what the hell has happened to the Democrat Party? I almost messaged you, AK, last night because it was one of the big topics on the Mark Levin show. I mean, they went from the party of the working class to the strong progressive radical party, the strong far left, the radical left, hijacked them to now absolutely doing everything that they can do to destroy this country. So my original opening was talking about where has this leadership in this party gone? And I think that I echo the same thing that's being talked about on many different platforms. How are they going to come back together? And what is their message going to be? Because they've showed what their message is, which is everything against American and American values and securing this country and any form of leadership. And we are put into a position where I am thankful that it was certified today. And I do believe, as many, that we get in on the 20th and some very fast changing policies and changes to this country are going to happen very quickly to start to turn the ship around and right all of the wrongs and the destruction that the Democrat Party has inflicted on this country.
Yeah, I just think it's really an incredible day. Sometimes I think when we're in it, it's sometimes hard to realize how historic this moment is. The fact that, again, if you just go back 4 years ago, and then just say that, imagine 4 years from now, like if on January 6th of 2021, right, this day that the Democrats and the machine and the uniparty all used because they said, this is our moment to strip back power from this populist movement. Like, make no mistake. Do I believe that there were violent actors that were part of January 6th? Of course. But the vast majority of people, I'm saying like 99.999%, were actually just peaceful observers. Some of them maybe got rattled up because there was that report that came out that had 26 FBI informants that were embedded somewhere in the crowd on January 6th. And then on the other side of the building, where they were literally opening the doors, you had people wandering in that were, again, arrested and have received insane prison sentences. And this is just, again, it was all meant to be able to strip away, this is my opinion, from this populist movement in this country and to reassert this kind of like, okay, you've got this like corporate uniparty establishment thing. Republicans and Democrats, like, we're like, okay, we kind of agree, we disagree here. Not because that's what the people believe, but because those that were in power became complacent. That's what I honestly think. And so to say on that day, after what had happened, like, just like go back and watch a clip at this exact time, 7:27 Central Time, and tell me what was playing on the TV. Every news broadcast was saying Donald Trump stages insurrection, country on the brink of downfall.
But the country, right? But today,
my point is, right? Like, but this
right.
is what I'm saying. 4 years ago. So, like, take a step back and understand that's why this is so historical. That today, 4 years later, you turn on the news and they're just like, yeah, Donald Trump's going to be president and blah, blah, blah. Right. So it just shows that we, the people, really won. And now the real work begins. And I think that those that were part of bringing down this system are scared to death. And I actually want to mention
Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, honestly, like, I'm not even
don't want to be governor.
Yeah, like, honestly, like, I think they're scared to death because there is a reckoning. It's not just like Trump coming in and saying like, let's let bygones be bygones. It's like, no, people went so far into sedition and other acts to specifically thwart Donald Trump's efforts at the end of his administration, and then in between, all right, until this administration began, all of the things that were done that I believe were illegal, that I believe that Pam Bondi, as Attorney General, and Department of Justice will be able to go and look and say what was happening in this country, abuse of power. Now, I do want to mention a couple of comments, and if you have questions, you can throw your comments, and we're going to address them. Shout out to Protocol saying, "What up, peace to you, Protocol." And then Go for Big Guy says, "How can I super chat you all? It won't let me." Well, we are.
I don't even.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
I don't even know how to I don't know how to respond to him in the chat box. If you can figure that out, AK.
Yeah, he'll just hear if he watches back, I guess. Eventually, we'll figure out how to do that. But what ends up happening is that because we're a new channel, we don't have enough subscribers yet or enough hours watched to qualify for super chat. So if you want to help support the show, we do have we do have a what the heck is it called? A Patreon account. So patreon.com/red, right, and real. All one word, red, right, and real. And that's our Patreon. Also, you can cash at me. It's on our Facebook page. If you go and check out our Facebook page, cash at me. We'll set that aside for the show because Bella and I actually want to do this live in person. There's a studio that we've been in some conversations with, and it ain't free. It's not actually super expensive. So yeah, you can become a subscriber there. But yeah, continue to drop your comments in the chat, and we'll address them as they come up. But yeah, Bella, I just wanted to say that again. The gravity of this day, 4 years removed from what they tried to paint January 6th as, it's just wild sometimes that when you take a step back, you realize like, yeah, all of those narratives were complete, utter BS meant to push a narrative.
And I'll go back even further. I mean, when I started this podcast in 2010, there wasn't anybody. And, I think that there was, in a large part, I think that even big media heads, and I won't name the names, but I don't even think they understood how big and massive the establishment was. When Mitt Romney ran, I didn't really understand how big the establishment was. But as time went on and my battle and my political activism, I think you blindly go with faith. And I had belief in the people and the process of, originally my goal was to get people awake, paying attention, and voting. And I did see a big shift, and I learned an awful lot during the 2016 presidential campaign. And I know America did as well. When all of those, was it 16 or 18 of them, and he took them all out with low energy Jeb, Rubio. He had a name for every single one of them.
Little Marco,
Ted,
but then
low energy Jeb.
When Ted Cruz became on the Trump team, then he went from Lion, Lyin, to Lion, Lion. He's a lion.
Here's what I saw. I'm a salesperson by trade, okay?
Yeah.
And I can come in looking pretty harmless and possibly, not very dangerous to the competition. That's what Trump did. Okay. He came down that escalator. He was laughed at. I think the only one that, I'm going to blank on her name, she's got the long blonde hair, at that dinner. And when asked who had the highest chance.
Oh, your girl, Ann Coulter.
Ann Coulter.
She's a trip in and of herself, man.
Yes. But let's look at what was missing in America. And that is someone that could speak to us like who we are, and then say things to us that got us to understand this isn't just another political figure coming here to blow hot air at us and to get into office and do the same as everybody else. So when Donald Trump started picking key things that, just like the you'd be in jail, low energy jab, all of those jabs, we all knew it was true. We knew Jeb Bush didn't have a chance in hell of getting anywhere. So when he called him out on it, it's bringing realism and authenticity to the stage of the highest position of this country. And that's why when this last year and everything that literally could get caught on fire, and they stood there with the mumbling, bumbling, and God bless them. But when Biden turned to the Easter Bunny as his leader to walk him off stage, and then Kamala sat and giggled about her beautiful yellow bus and what's been there, shouldn't be there, around there, up there. I mean, whatever the hell she was trying to say, we're out there working our jobs. Okay. We're out there trying to go to the grocery store. We're trying to come home and not use our credit cards to pay for groceries. We understand that we have already had our behinds slackered in 2020, but we also know the only way out from underneath this storm and into the lightness and any hope of any opportunity for the American belief and dream is Donald J. Trump. But we also know what happened in 2020. I had many wonderful conversations with young people leading up to the election. Somalian girl that said that she just couldn't believe Kamala went on that podcast that was known for sex talk and rambled on. The kids at McDonald's all knew that they would have a future if Donald J. Trump got in office. So my question was, where are they going to go? How are they going to redefine themselves? I truly believe, and you can put me on record for this one, they're going to need their own Donald J. Trump, because otherwise the Democrat Party is going to be in trouble for a very long time.
Yeah.
We've
Well,
seen
so
her-
here's the thing for me, right? Like the way that I look at it, Bella, like I know that you come from like a different perspective, right? Like again, working class, understanding, like you're out there, you're grinding, you're living your life. You see things at a much higher macro level. I come from like a small ball political game world where I have the ability to connect with people that are everyday working class, regular class folks. That's like one of my big things that I love to do. I want to like dispel that illusion that being involved at a high of a level as I am. Because again, for those of you that are watching that have no idea who I am or who this wonderful lady is that I'm doing this podcast with, I'm the Republican National Committee man from the state of Minnesota. There's only 168 RNC committee members in the entire country for the Republican Party. I'm like the highest that you can be. And Bella is a person that loves her country, loves this state sometimes, and loves President Trump, but she loves having conversations with people about real politics. So I want to dispel this myth that somehow you have to be like some elite or whatever to be involved in the Republican Party, because I'm proof that that's not the case. Hard work, building relationships. But what I wanted to kind of wrap up to, and then I want to move on to a next topic,
Yes.
Bella, is that, when we think about the historic moment that today is and putting everything in its proper context, and then you ask that question, what do Democrats have to do? They have to find their own Donald J. Trump. I don't think it's possible. I think the Democrat Party, because I believe that they have no actual operating core morality, their only morality now is power, whatever gives them power. And that is a fleeting principle, because you will go to terrible lengths to keep your power. And once it's exposed, there's no more putting the genie back in the bottle. Now, people, I believe, have a short political memory because everything else in your personal life that's happening takes away from your political memory. But we're going to continue to remind them. And by we, I'm talking about people that support this country, America first, make America great again. We will continually remind people of all of the tyrannical, authoritarian, Marxist, evil things that the Democrat parties and those that collaborated with them in the Republican Party did to shut down and harm Americans, all for their own political means, to their political ends. And there's a million topics we can talk about. And I think that's what is incumbent upon us as people that remember what they did. Remember that they were motivated by power, but they can't remain in power. And I hope that happens to the best of my abilities. I'm one man, you're one woman on one show, one podcast that we're trying to do, and that's it. But I'm not going to stop reminding people when people are like, yeah, were the Democrats that bad? I'm like, oh ho ho, let me remind you of all of these terrible, evil, authoritarian, fascistic things that they did, that they will try and do again. These are the same people. They're not going to change that much. So with that beautiful note, let's talk. Let's do a little palate cleanser, a little palate cleansing, because sometimes it can get a little heady talking about politics and the work of electioneering. You came across, and you know what? Now that I'm saying it, I lost it. So never mind.
You didn't.
I did.
Take a
Yeah.
second.
I set it aside somewhere, and I can't. I wanted to do the thing about you're sitting there and you're not sure if you can see straight or something. But
oh, come on now. You have to. Okay.
No, I closed out the tab and I can't find it.
Well, can I just resend it to you?
Well, yeah, maybe. Let me just take a look here.
We
I might
worked
actually have
so
it in my history.
hard. I'm putting this together. The audience can just hang on one fat
this is life. This is how life happens. All right, so let's see. Maybe it's this one. Let's find out. But yeah, so again, from time to time, we're gonna try and break down some more heady stuff, and then Bella, like earlier, for instance, you made up a word I've never heard before. You said schnuckling, or it's like you wanted to say shellacked, and you wanted to say schnuckered, and you wanted to say schnapps. I don't know, but you made up a very interesting word.
That's when I just sent you something on Facebook Messenger.
Okay.
That's like when I used to say I'm exhaustipated. That was one of my favorite ones.
Exhaustipated.
I can also show you what my next career maneuver is going to be. No, we can segue. If look for it was a video of a guy saying that he had sat and watched. We'll segue into talking about this fog, and then we'll get into the terrorism.
I wanted to do the one with you take an edible, and or it was something about doing an edible, but we don't have that one. So I say that we can move into.
I know, but I got to explain the edible scene.
Go ahead. I can't find it, but keep on.
I worked so hard. So bottom line, so we've had this mysterious fog. It's been in multiple states. I've tried not to think too much about it. If you hear me hacking every once in a while, I've had a bout of really bad bronchitis and sinus infection. And a good friend of mine, Richard Dahl, had said to me the other day, well, it's that goddamn fog and they're seeding it and everybody's getting infected by it. And you and I talked about it yesterday. And so I'd sent you this video where it's a guy saying that, excuse me, he watched a movie for 3 hours and he cried out of depression, thinking that he'd lost his hearing, only to realize he'd eaten some of those edible, CBD gummies and got, stoned. So he didn't realize that he had hit the mute button. And so he wasted 3 hours of his life crying, thinking that he'd lost his hearing, only to realize it was from the gummies. And I said to you during warm up, I said, I could literally see myself doing something, very similar, and then being convinced that it was maybe caused by the fog that I've lost my hearing, because I'm very suggestible. And I know that Hot Rod is listening tonight, and we talked about the Grill of Death a couple of weeks ago with AK. Still didn't get the humor about the Grill of Death, and I'm not going to go down that road again. But I thought it was very interesting that I was watching Fox News last night, and AK, we still don't have anything definitive about it. But they were talking last night when you were saying yesterday, the fog is going to taste like where it is, whether it's out in a farmland or whatever. And they were saying, and I do believe this, fog doesn't really have a taste or a smell or a sense to it. But there was some question as to, and it all leads back to.
Look, I got it. All right, let's hopefully this lead up is worth it. So let's play it.
sex and candy here. I smell sex and candy here.
All right, so I never eaten an edible again. I just watched a 2-hour movie on mute and started crying because I thought I was deaf. So there's some of Bella's humor.
Hey, I thought I was getting impetigo off of a charcoal grilling event up at Hot Rods, and literally I have been scared out of my witless mind over many of scenarios. Just ask me about when I was convinced that terrorists were coming over from Canada to North Dakota and goddamn camels were coming with them. I mean, I have stories, okay, from those North Dakota days. But the overall consensus is we can't believe the government anymore. We can't believe them, which is going to lead into, we have these terror attacks. We can't believe the FBI because what was the FBI doing? Too busy running around after school board members and mothers and fathers going to school boards trying to fight for the rights of their children. They were too busy going after the megas. They're going after everybody other than terrorists and who they're supposed to. And now they're afraid to even say in the very beginning of these investigations, and we still don't know enough unless you have some insight. The first one that we can talk about is the Mardi Gras Louisiana terror attack.
Yeah, so let's just kind of get this queued up. Obviously, everyone paid attention on New Year's Day. This horrific terrorist attack occurs in New Orleans, right? And like kind of the thing that I always try and do is I always try and just wait and see what is actually going on, right? Like what is happening, because most of the stuff that comes out ends up changing. I think some people say give it 24-hour, 48-hour rule. But this horrific attack occurs where this guy, initially there was some Fox News report that said that he came through Eagle Pass, Texas. So then people were like, aha, see, it's an illegal criminal alien or whatever. And it's like, well, turns out that's not the case. Turns out it was a guy, and for lack of a better term, only for the purposes of illustrating, I was born in the United States. My mother is an American. She comes from a long lineage on certain branches of the family tree going back to the 1500s in this country. Certain branches came from Ireland in the late 1800s, early 1900s, up through Canada. But I am an American because my mother is from this country and has been here for generations and generations. My father, however, immigrated to this country in the 70s, and I am a child of that product. That's what this terrorist had the same makeup. So he's an American. It's not like both of his parents came here and he's like a first generation. No, his mother is Black American and his dad was from like whatever, some country, Pakistan or Afghanistan. I don't know the exact details. But this terrorist, also another interesting caveat, turns out that he's a 20-year armed forces veteran, right? He served some active duty time in the U.S. Army, served some time as a reservist for a bunch of years. But allegedly, according to the reports, he was I guess he was radicalized by his local mosque, and then he pledged allegiance to ISIS, and he had an ISIS flag in the back of his truck when he mowed down a total of like 50 people. 35 are hurt still. 14 victims are dead, and then he crashed, got out the vehicle, ambush style, but police had already seen him because he went right around the barrier, and they engaged him and they took him out. He hit 2 police officers. They're in great condition for being shot. I mean, as good a condition you can be for being shot, but they're not in critical condition. And he smoked himself by committing this terrorist attack. So that's what we know. So that's all of these interesting narratives where it's like, what can this be? And I want to ask you, Bella, when you start to hear more of like the online murmurings of like, is this a black flag event? Is this, is the government trying to send a message to set something up for the future? For instance, you set up a narrative that you have a member of the U.S. Armed Forces who is black in, I guess, Pakistani or whatever. And you set up the narrative that veterans are dangerous in this country and they're a powder keg. And then you give, I guess, the green light for mass surveillance on American veterans. Do you think that that's a possibility? Or do you say, hey, like, I just don't think that that's where our government's doing things. This sounds like a just homegrown, radicalized at his local mosque, bread and butter terrorist who just happens to also be an American citizen, who just also happens to be a veteran of the U.S. Army and Reserves. What do you think? What say you, Bella?
Joe Biden said the greatest threat against this country was white supremacists. January.
Hey, the FBI said one of the greatest threats. They have the greatest threat to this country is white supremacy. You're right. He did say that multiple times.
Yeah. January 6th, I was sitting in an auto repair shop when the coverage started. I immediately said, those are not Trumpsters. That's not what we do. AK and I have different views on it. I believe it was a complete inside job. I think it was completely staged. There were FBI agents throughout the entire process. Nancy could have pulled in the National Guard. There was so many different things that could have happened. It was purposely staged to create the narrative, which has been going on and on and on ever since Trump announced he was running for election, that we are the criminals. We are the threat against America, and we are the threat against the establishment, and so is Trump. Now, I don't know enough to comment on where exactly I think, but it is highly suspicious. And as I believe it was not Lindsey Graham, is it Kennedy in Louisiana that said,
yeah, Senator Kennedy. Yep.
Senator Kennedy said, trust me, you will know what got behind this. And that's why it is, we're going to know more sometime after the 20th.
Yeah. And that's the thing for me, the reason I asked your perspective is because I think a lot of people, there's kind of two mindsets to it. We've seen the awful things that the government has been complacent in recent history that has kind of like opened people's awareness that, yeah, like these are not one-off events. Like you can go back to the founding of the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover and say that there were some horrendous, terrible things that the U.S. government has been involved in. And one of the ways that they keep a lot of that stuff suppressed is through, classification, right? So someone might ask for a freedom of information and then they redact all of these things, even though we're not talking about current operators or even current operations. And most of those operators are dead and long gone, but the government still redacts it and they keep this information classified because they know that it will shake the confidence of Americans, or that's what they fear. I, however, think that the only way to actually rebuild trust in an institution that has shown to be corrupt is you have to let it all hang out, let it all air out. If you can do that, then you can actually rebuild. And so, that's why it's always interesting. So again, my initial reaction reading about this guy, it is weird that he was suddenly radicalized so quickly. But again, that's what can happen. I mean, he made a video pledging his allegiance to ISIS. In right here, it said that he drove to New Orleans around 2:30 and posted Facebook support for ISIS before he went and did it. And he went there apparently October 31st, went there October 10th. And it's kind of weird because like when he posted this stuff on his social media, like you would think that there would have been a faster reaction, but that just kind of shows that the incompetence of the FBI. But ultimately, my kind of analysis is this sounds like homegrown terrorism. I don't think this is like an MK Ultra situation. This is just a dude that has unfortunately believed the stuff that's being pushed by what I would say most of the Marxists in this country that are trying to sow dissent and contention of saying like, oh, hey, America's a bad country and, we're supporting whatever Israel and we're committing terrorism against the rest of the country or the rest of the world by supporting like a state like Israel. So that's the way that I see it. I think that's what this comes out to be. But not to like give us more,
Well, here, let me jump in here.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned in warm up, suddenly we have forgotten about many other high crimes that have been committed. Do we remember when the van, there was a series of pipe bombs that allegedly, okay, there was a Florida man arrested for allegedly mailing a series of pipe bombs to critics of President Donald Trump. And so we go trying to figure out where these pipe bombs are coming from, and they're mailed. And then, gee, out of nowhere, what did they find? What was the vehicle that the guy was driving that was mailing these pipe bombs?
I don't know. You tell me. I don't know.
Covered in Trump stickers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It
I
was
didn't know
back in 2018. It was a 56-year-old Caesar Sayak who was charged with 5 federal criminal counts because, of course, all of a sudden some man is found mailing pipe bombs and he's got Trump stickers all over. I mean, that's why I say when you go back to, we don't know and understand just how deep the deep state and the establishment is, but they will stop at nothing. So when things like this come to question and we can't get answers and we can't get results, I mean, that's why I say the FBI, we got to be done with those guys. They have been too busy doing everything, including, I believe it was inside jobs on the suicide attempts on Donald J. Trump. Now, what are you going up to next to?
Yeah, so you talked about pipe bombs, and I think that this kind of all comes together, right? So I know that you're talking about a completely different
Death threat.
incident.
Sorry, I said the same thing. I said
right.
Suicide meant death threat. Sorry.
Yeah,
wrong word.
And so when you were talking about the pipe bombs and also tying back into January 6th, the anniversary, people have been asking this question since then. Whatever happened to the person with the pipe bombs? And then 2 days ago, all of a sudden this story pops up in the AP. FBI releases new video of a suspect planting a pipe bomb near DNC offices on the eve of Capitol riot. And here's the other thing that's interesting. Do you see what they called it? They called it in the AP. This story is from 2 days ago. Okay. This story was written on January 2nd. So I guess technically it's 4 days ago now. But January 2nd, they call it a riot. They didn't say from on eve of Capitol insurrection. So it's just fascinating to see when the corporate mainstream media, they know that they are no longer supporting a popular narrative. I think they've lost the information battle. And the AP plants, they not plant, but they put this story out about this pipe bomb being planted, but they use Capitol riot. And I bet if you were to search 100 headlines that the AP published about January 6th, I bet they've used Capitol riot less than 10 times, and 90 times out of 100, they're saying insurrection. So it's just interesting. But my point is that you have these terror incident that occurs in New Orleans, right? You have Donald Trump coming in with a popular mandate, and all of a sudden the FBI is like, hey, I know a lot of people have been asking whatever happened to the pipe bombs that got planted on January 6th, because there's a lot of theories and interesting perspectives that are put out about what that actually was, what these are, but how they've never found this person. But then all of a sudden they release this and they say, here's who planted one of the pipe bombs. Like, it only took 4 years, but here we go. So I just think, again, if we're tying and we're going back into the story that we were just talking about in regards to this terrorist that committed this terrible, atrocious act in New Orleans. And the question is, what do I think? Do I think that the FBI is covering up something? Clearly, the FBI has the capacity to do that. In the case of the New Orleans terrorists,
capacity. Wait a minute. Whoa. Now remember, he's got a totally different viewpoint than me. I mean, if we remember how the FBI handled Hillary rode hard Hildebeest Clinton and how they've given a pass on everything. The FBI is so corrupt. I mean, Christopher Wray is done. Thank goodness, because the FBI has to be gutted. They have to have some legitimacy. We have to have some belief in them, because they are not the FBI that was the FBI even 20 years ago. And I know you and I have gone back and forth on this, but we only have a couple of minutes left, because I actually have something at 8:00 that I meant to tell you about. I can run a couple seconds late, but we didn't even get to any of the topics on Minnesota. And quite honestly, it doesn't even fit in to try and segue into the lawsuit that I'd like to place against Timmy flannel man tampon waltz, but we'll have to add that to the next show. But how do you want to kind of wrap around and close out on this one?
Yeah, so I'd say we just go back to where we kind of started and we've been on. Just remember, everyone, okay? This is a historic day, and to have proper perspective to understand how far we've come in regards to defeating the narrative that was so ingrained that 4 years ago, it was nonstop news coverage about one of the, again, the narrative that was planted by the Democrats and by the uniparty Republicans was that Donald Trump instigated an insurrection that is the worst day in American history, okay? That's literally what the narrative that they tried to seed. Joe Biden, even during this election cycle, again, reiterated it's the worst day we've seen since the Civil War.
They also wanted us to believe that Stormy Daniels and the golden showers was like the worst thing that this. Here's the thing. We are a smart country. We know and understand. We've lived through the insanity, the crimes. That's why when he looked at her and said, "You'd be in jail," we understand there is no accountability. That's why these people do the things that they do. Presidents don't get arrested, okay? We know this, but we also know that we're sick and tired of the insanity, and we're sick and tired of the destruction of this country. And so you are 10,000 trillion times right of the significance of this real win, because America has spoken. Go ahead, AK.
Yeah, and I just want to say for everyone watching the stream, we're going to do this every Monday, 7 p.m. Central. So if you're not following us on our Facebook page, I know it's Facebook, little boomer tech. It's okay. We also stream on my X account, and that's at Real AK Kamara. But you can search on Facebook, Red, Right, and Real. Like the fan page there. We always will put up an event, so you can actually just click that you're going to attend the event. Is an easy way. You can also go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/at Red, Right, and Real. At symbol is at Red, Right, Real. And that's where you can find us on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe there if you haven't already. Make sure that you share this video after the fact. So if you're watching this after, you don't watch it live, make sure to share this video. During the live stream, again, any questions that people have, we will throw out the chats. We'll give the head nod. We'll answer questions that you might have. But really, this is this experiment, episode 9, between Bella D'Angelo and AK Kamara, trying to break down some of the news stories and cultural events that are happening from a Republican Party official perspective, because that's literally what I am, even though I don't look like it, and from a working class real perspective. But we both love this country, which is why we are Red, Right, and Real. So just make sure to follow our pages. You can find Bella D'Angelo if you search for her, find her Facebook page. She's going to eventually get on some of the other socials, but AK Kamara, literally, you can find me basically everywhere, either at Real AK Kamara or at AK Kamara. You can find me on all my socials, TikTok, X, the whole 9 yards. And that's what I got for you for this week. But again, every Monday, tune in, 7 p.m. Central Time, and we'll go an hour. Maybe some weeks we'll go a little bit longer. But that's what I have for you, Bella. What do you want to have to send us off to the good night?
I'm just going to say I'm on most social media outlets. It's Bella D'Angelo. On Facebook, it's BellaDangelo. It's the horse profile picture. I am on Truth Social. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter as well. Eventually, I think we'll have links so that people can find them. But I just want to thank everybody, and everybody needs to give a big old thank you to the higher power, wherever that higher power is. This is the beginning of the great turnaround and awakening of this country. And we did it collectively, whether we were having the conversation in our living room, at the coffee shop, at our work, in our church, wherever. We all knew and understood deeply and inherently that if we did not get this right, we did not have a future to look forward to. And I believe in a divine intervention, because when Donald J. Trump moved his head to look at that screen and that bullet just clipped the top of his ear, and he had the clearness to turn around and pump that fist and say, fight, 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 that sent a message to you and I and to the world. This is a man that is going to fundamentally restore America, restore Americans' faith, and put America back on the international stage. So if you don't want a tomahawk up your wahoo, you better pucker up, because this is a new America with a real leader, Donald J. Trump. I'm going to say good night, God bless America, and ciao for now.
Are you fired up? Then take action. Copy the link to this episode and text it to one friend who needs to hear it. Support us where you found us by liking and subscribing for future content. This is a grassroots production supported by listeners like you.